All right, we are rejoined to the show. Triumphant return. One, Councilman Bill Henry, welcome back to the show, sir. Yes, he's doing the victory pose, as the visitors can see. Bill, it should be noted that the last time you were on this program, it was about 9 days before the world changed. And now you're back.
Yeah, I'm trying not to put the burden for that on the city that breathes. There's no way that the fact that I actually came down to the living room and sat with a whole bunch of you and then weren't allowed to sit with people for months afterwards, those couldn't possibly be connected.
Yeah, not at all. No.
Just a coincidence, just a coincidence.
We didn't end the world. No, it's not our fault. Fun fact, I literally just went to the office for the first time in almost 7 months today to get a new laptop. It's crazy. Anyway, that is not why we're here today. We're here to talk about your, well, you're going to be the Comptroller of Baltimore, presumably. So congrats.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. We're definitely looking forward to it.
I think we are all looking forward to a little bit of change in the city. We will cover those topics and more. I guess first off, this is about as national as I'm going to get in terms of topics. But the primary election in Baltimore was a good turnout. So what was the percentage on that? Was it in the 48% range?
For total turnout?
Yeah, in the city of Baltimore.
Yeah, it was somewhere right around half, and it was incredibly impressive in that, given all the things that went wrong leading up to the election, between the all mail-in ballot and then the printing errors and the delays getting them out, the fact that almost the same number of people actually came out and voted percentage-wise as came out 4 years earlier for a regular in-person election. I was really happy. I mean, it was a good starting point.
Yeah, and given Baltimore City's historically low voter turnout, it's good to see that number holding steady in the face of a global pandemic.
Yeah, I know. Although part of me still thinks that we shouldn't be too excited or too happy when only 1 out of every 2 people who are registered to vote actually does so. If you think about what voting means, really big picture, your vote is your voice in the governance of your city, your state, your country. And the fact that so many people choose not to even use it is a little depressing.
Well, yeah, which brings us to future topics in this here interview. But I feel like in Baltimore, a lot of people were very, very disenfranchised, and maybe the tide is turning somewhat with people like you primarying out somebody who's been in that position for so long, and a lot of faith lost in the leadership structure of our city. But if I'm going to make a joke about what's going on with the presidential election, there was not a whiff of complaint about voter fraud in the primary, which was practically 100% mail-in ballots. Do we know how many millions of votes were fraud in the primary? Was it in the 12 million range or the 5 million range?
I think that they've said there were a couple.
Oh.
apparently the fears of the fears of huge amounts of voter fraud for mail-in ballots were not unlike the fears of huge amounts of flag burning that would come from legalizing flag burning.
That's true. Oh wow, that's a deep cut. That reminds me, I have a flag I need to burn tomorrow. Because it's so speech.
I have a flag. I have no interest in burning it. I'm pretty sure it's got a pretty high nylon count too, so it would really be more melting it. And I don't think that would be that wouldn't be a good thing.
Yeah, first of all, it cost me $22, and I don't want to inhale all those fumes. And you know, with technology these days, you can just like get an animated GIF of a burning flag and make it your profile photo on Twitter. So,
You know, for about that same price, you can get a flag that's actually been flown over the Capitol of the United States.
really,
Yep,
$2?
your congressman's office will sell you a flag that has been flown over the United States Capitol. Probably only for a couple minutes, but yeah.
But I need this thing. I gotta have one. I'm not even gonna burn it.
I'll put together a little list of fun gifts that you can give people that you never thought you could.
Perfect idea. First of all, for your TikTok, which is kind of why you're here today. Fangirl on the video, producer Mila saw the TikTok and was just foaming at the mouth over it, not because of rabies, but because it's horrible. It's Bill Henry doing like political instructionals in TikTok form. One of which, well, first of all, we need to get some more of these TikToks going. And if you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, you need to send Bill Henry ideas for future TikToks, because I think it's a sensational way to get the kids interested in city politics.
Because that's the thing, you know, instead of me worrying about what are the kids talking about, I can be what the kids are talking about.
Oh my God. I could just hear them. All the city college kids are like, did you see that new Bill Henry TikTok where he's talking about, he's describing the Department of Public Works and what it does? It's amazing.
Oh, that's so horrifying. Actually, you know, my daughter has friends at City College. I should probably embarrass her greatly by working on that. Yeah.
Oh, that's one of the best ideas.
Somebody's not muted.
There's producer Mila in the background. Oh, I forgot to give us both shout outs for being Loyola grads, Loyola High School. Have they stripped the name Blake Field yet? Yep, roll downs roll. Brothers for Others, all that stuff. Are there any updates on the name controversy? Because I don't know.
I saw something on social media a couple, I guess it might be months ago now, about the administration was in conversations about taking Blakefield off of the name, and I think that's great. I think that, to be honest, probably somewhere between 95 and 99% of the people in the Baltimore area who didn't go to Loyola call it Loyola High School.
Right.
So I don't think that they're going to be losing anything in terms of, you know, major marketing if they take the Blakehurst name out and the Blakefield name out, and if you know, it can be an example of trying to right wrongs from another era.
Sounds good
Just
to
be
me.
bad for others and do that.
Yes, in the spirit of being brothers for others, and I do believe that Tom Clancy's Ghost will continue to donate lots of money to their endowment. So
Somewhere I have a 6-foot-long inflatable Red October submarine.
What?
Not signed by Tom Clancy, and I can't find it. It was a prize on a radio show giveaway back when the movie came out, and I won it. And then a couple years later, he was a graduation speaker at Hopkins. So I went up to the tent where they were all getting ready, and I got him to sign it. That would probably be worth some money now that he's dead.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can look it up on eBay, you could probably get at least $25 for it. And for a flag that's been flown over the Capitol building.
That's right. I just reinvested. I reinvested the flag. Step 3, profit.
That's right. You would be the red paperclip guy. One of my favorite stories of all time. Speaking of Tom Clancy, one of my major regrets, did he ever actually get a gun range installed in his luxury condominium on the waterfront?
Oh, I do remember hearing about that, but I don't know if that was a real story, if that was just like urban legend that made it into print.
Yeah.
That seems really amazingly unsafe, and if it isn't illegal, it really ought to be. You know, having a gun range in your apartment doesn't seem like a good idea.
Adjacent to other luxury condos? Yeah, I don't know.
Or even just, you know, above. I mean, if you just shoot out the window, where's that bullet going to eventually land? Probably someplace expensive.
I would also imagine the amount of money that he would have had to have spent on soundproofing that gun range would have really blown the whole worthwhile factor out of the water.
And it wouldn't be like he couldn't afford to just have another place with a gun range
right
out in the wilderness
right.
somewhere where no one's going to get hurt.
A farmland in Anne Arundel County somewhere.
And then he could also afford to pay for someone else to take him to it. You know, when you're that level of rich, why be unsafe when you can just spend your money on something else?
Excellent.
Yeah, that's a good segue.
Speaking of segues, I mean, that's what this show is all about, tangents and segues. But, you know, getting back to the whole primary.
That would be a great name for a podcast, Tangents and Segues.
Okay. All right, yes, we'll just rename this show Tangents and Segues. We'll do.
Good, and now I can have the city that breathes. That's my master plan.
I'll sell it to you for $22. Anyway, getting back to the primary, which did have a ballot. Now we're getting into the general election, which has a ballot. And as is tradition, the Baltimore City has a bunch of questions on it. Most of which, I mean, well, actually not most of which, but oftentimes these things are pretty dull, mundane, like bond questions. Does the aquarium get $20 million loan? Does, you know, the city get to build schools, you know, that sort of thing. But this time there are a few questions that are a little more important than usual, which is part of the reason you're here today. And your TikTok explains them eloquently, but I figured, hey, why not take 20 minutes longer than necessary to explain all of these questions? So let's do it. Let's go over these here questions, and we'll get to the one that we were speaking about off mic last, if you don't mind.
Okay, so the first four questions, A, B, C, and D, are, as you described, they're the bond bills, the bond questions, and you see them on your ballot every 2 years. The city borrows money to do big capital improvement projects and pays the money back over a number of years using property tax revenue. And this year we're spending $12 million, we're borrowing $12 million for affordable housing. We're borrowing $38 million for school construction, another $38 million for general community and economic development, and then about $72 million to fix up different public facilities. But the real drama this year is around the 7 charter amendments that are now ballot questions E through K. And so question E, that is whether we should have a charter review commission every 10 years automatically. And this would be a good idea because rather than just making tweaks whenever is needed, you could just say that every 10 years we're going to look at the charter, we're going to make a very comprehensive look at it, and we're going to spend a year or so. We're putting together a big commission with representation from all around Baltimore, and that commission will think about what needs to be done and then make a set of recommendations to the city council, and then the mayor and city council can move forward with them or not, depending on how the council and the mayor feel. Question F is—
Wait, I have a question about this question.
Question about the question.
In the city charter, is that lion thing still in there?
That lion thing?
I can't take a lion to the theater. And I know this is in the city charter. There's a line about willful breeding of mosquitoes. You're not allowed to do that.
All right, now you're just making stuff up. No, I'm not gonna say that there is nothing in the charter that is arcane or archaic and doesn't need to be either modernized or just taken out entirely. But the animal husbandry bits, those parts I don't remember from the most recent read through. The question F, the one that's nearest and dearest to my heart, that is giving the city council the power to add money to budget lines. And this is one that is important partly because most people in Baltimore already think we can do it and get mad at us when we don't. This past budget year, during budget season, I got like 5,000 emails from people who wanted the city council to defund the police, right, and take some of that money and reinvest it in things that the city really needs, many of which also have public safety implications and would just be a more reasonable way of addressing public safety. And while the council does have the power to make cuts, and we cut millions of dollars out of the police budget, the council does not have the power to take that money and say, here, it's going to be spent on this instead. And we had a whole list of things that we thought we should be spending some of that money on, and the mayor just chose not to do it. And that is up to the mayor.
Things on mind at the time.
Oh no, this was this year.
That was Jack Young. Okay.
Yeah, this was Jack. This was Jack, and Jack simply didn't want to do any of the things that we had suggested. So he pretty much, his response to the council's cutting the police budget was not dissimilar to a parent when their kid says, I don't understand why we can't have chocolate cheesecake for dinner every night.
Really good question.
Thanks, honey. Thanks, honey. I'm going to take that into consideration. Gotcha. Appreciate the input.
Right.
And the reality is the city council is the voice of the people of Baltimore City. And when the city council speaks, we're speaking for the people who elected us.
In theory.
And in theory, and also in practice, because if we don't say what they feel, they can elect new city council people.
True.
And that is why the council should be an equal partner in the budget process. And right now, it simply isn't. There's a great set of articles by Joan Jacobson that the Baltimore Brew has run over the last couple of days. The Imperial Mayoralty. And I think it's part 3 that focuses on the history behind it. A professor emeritus now at Johns Hopkins, a guy named Matt Prenson, wrote a great history of Baltimore and how our government got this way. And it basically got this way because 120 years ago, the city council was full of ward bosses and corrupt business folks, and the the Reform Republican administration convinced the city to take the city council out of the budgeting process and let the good, honest, progressive Republican mayor make all the decisions. Let me say that again, because you don't hear those words together much. Let the good, progressive Republican mayor make all the budget decisions because you can't trust the evil, business-oriented Democratic city council members. That's where we were. That's where we were back in the 1890s. And even though that's not where we are now, we're still suffering under that same immensely strong mayor system. And if you want to eliminate the strong mayor system, there are other things that we can do, and we can talk about those later. But if you just want to tweak it a little bit and give the council an even chance, just provide the checks and balances that we all expect from government, you know, because we learned that in grade school and middle school. We watch Schoolhouse Rock, and we see the three-ring circus of government, and we see how everything is supposed to balance. You think that's happening at the local level. It's not.
No, and I think that's what a lot of people have noticed generationally, and up until this point in time, I haven't seen any change. But I have a quick question about the districts, as they did change last census. Are they going to change again? And like, who does that?
So redistricting will happen in the coming city council term. You do the redistricting after you get the results back from the census. So we'll have that information in early 2021, maybe a little bit later than usual because we extended the deadlines for the census this year because of the pandemic. But the way that the charter requires us to do redistricting, the mayor will draw up a new map in 2021.
So Brandon Scott's going to get out a pen and actually draw the map.
Usually they subcontract it out to the planning department, but I think the very last time they actually had a GIS unit that works with CityStat and in the mayor's office, and they did the actual number crunching. Because, I mean, a lot of it is really number crunching, because you have to make sure that every district has, within a very thin margin of difference, the same population as every other district.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I realized that it doesn't have to be in 2021. It just has to be before 2024.
Sure.
And he'll send a map to the council, and then the council can either amend it or pass it.
Is there any talk of anticipation of things changing greatly? Because the last go around, I remember, and this is just me complaining, I spent hours making a Google Earth city council district map. It was interactive, and I sent it off to City Paper, and they loved it, and they put it on their website, and then boom, it changed. And suddenly I was in a different district, and I was like, what the guys? And I learned that those districts change.
So what I would expect is that they probably won't do the redistricting until the second half of the term, because if the Charter Review Commission ballot question passes, then we will have to do a Charter Review Commission right away next spring. And one of the topics that is going to definitely be considered by the Charter Review Commission is, should we change the composition of the city council? Should we have fewer districts? Should we go back to multi-member districts? Should we have more at-large members? And so once that all gets settled, hopefully before the general election in 2022, so that it could be, any changes could be ratified by the voters, then sometime in 2023 they will do a redistricting based on whatever the composition of the city council is going to be.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Let's move on to the next one.
So questions G and question H are both about vetoes. So right now, one of the ways in which Baltimore City has the strongest mayor in America is you need 3/4 of the city council to vote to override a veto. That is huge compared to most other places. Even the United States Congress, you only need 2/3 to override a veto. In the General Assembly, right here in Maryland, you only need 3/5. If we only needed 3/5 to override a mayoral veto, we could do that with 9 out of 15 council members. Now we need 12. And that barrier, that threshold is so high, a lot of times controversial measures don't even come up, because even though you may be certain that you've got a majority of the people on the council who want that. You know that you don't have 12 out of 15, and you know the mayor is going to veto it. So you don't even bother to push the issue. And that's wrong. When you're talking about the way you govern a city, if 2/3 of the city council think something is a good idea, then maybe it should be done even if the mayor doesn't like it. Because now we're talking about a group of council people who represent 2/3 of the people in Baltimore City, when frankly the mayor may have only represented half.
Or less.
Or less. Yeah, if you go by the primaries. So then I think we're getting down to your favorite one,
Yes.
question I, the removal of elected officials. So there is already provisions in the charter that allow you to get rid of a city council person, including the president of the city council. You can get rid of the comptroller, but right now there is legally no way to remove a mayor for any reason. It's just not possible. The only way somebody stops being mayor of Baltimore is they resign, they die, or they stop being eligible to be mayor. And what that means is either they suddenly get younger, which hasn't happened, or they stop being a voter. And the only way that ever happens is if you're convicted of a felony.
Sorry, I was reminded of even when Sheila Dixon was being investigated and or was brought up on charges, she was still mayoring around. And yeah.
She was mayor after the trial ended with a finding of guilty, because you're not actually a felon until you are sentenced by the judge.
Right.
and in between, she resigned from office.
Yeah. Took a nice
but both then and more recently with Catherine Pugh, there were times when the mayor had done something such that a huge number of people in Baltimore already believed, regardless of the outcome of any court case, this person has lost the moral right to govern the city of Baltimore and should be removed. But when they went to the city council to ask us to remove her, we couldn't. And this charter amendment will take the processes that already exist for the other elected officials to remove them, standardize it so it's all the same process, and include the mayor. So you'll have any elected official would have a chance to speak before the council, but then a supermajority of the council can vote to remove them from office.
Hell yeah. Let's do that again.
Question J is a pretty straightforward one also. It allows the city auditor to have subpoena power. Right now, the city council has subpoena power collectively. We can vote ourselves subpoena power for a specific legislative investigation, and the inspector general has subpoena power. And I proposed giving the city auditor subpoena power, frankly, after being an attendee at a biennial audits oversight commission hearing where the city auditor at the time complained that the reason it had taken so long to do the audit for one department was they just wouldn't cooperate. They just wouldn't send the information that the auditors needed to do the report. And that kind of thing doesn't happen in other places. And I thought maybe the city auditor here just needs a bigger stick to be able to make certain that it's not just a, hey, send me that information or I'll ask you again. You know, it's send me that information or you're going to get an order from a judge.
Should be noted, I just saw the IG's report on Twitter and started following her, and I'm definitely going to get her on this show. It's going to be great.
Oh, yeah, she's great. You should. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you hadn't already. And then the last question, question K, is would create a city administrator position. And
this one was confusing to me because I'm curious as to, yeah, so go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted. But yeah, I'm super curious about this because anytime a new position or a new department is created, I think people just kind of still are going to vote yes on all of these things without necessarily understanding what it means.
So this one, the reason I say it's a little weird is because most of the other ones are about changing the charter to move power around or give some entity power it doesn't have right now. You know, that's we're bringing the Charter Review Commission into existence and giving that Charter Review Commission will have the power to review the charter and make recommendations. The vetoes change the threshold for the level, and increases the level of power the city council has. The ordinance of estimates one increases the power that the council has over budgeting. City auditor gives them subpoena power. The city administrator doesn't create any new power. Right now, the mayor could, if they wanted to, hire a city administrator, and that city administrator can do all the things described in the, you know, if you want to get into the weeds of what this charter amendment does, there's a whole list of how the job would actually work. But it doesn't create something that the mayor couldn't already create. What it does is it requires the mayor to do it.
Oh.
Because right now the mayor comes in and the mayor can really organize city government pretty much however they want. When Kurt Schmoke was mayor, he set up 5 executive assistants. You know, 1 for economic development, 1 for operations, 1 for education, 1 for I think public safety, and 1, I can't remember what the 5th one was, but might have been, oh yeah, that was government, that was intergovernmental. Whereas, you know, O'Malley might come in and say, I don't want 5 executive assistants, I want 3 deputy mayors, you know, and then Sheila might say, or when Sheila comes in, she might say, well, I want 3 deputy mayors, but I think I also need a chief of staff to do, you know, to run my office as well. And every mayor gets to come up with whatever configuration they think they should have. So any mayor could organize their staff and say, I'm going to have 1 person who's a city administrator, and they're going to do all the different agencies are going to report up to them. And then I'm going to have these other senior staff people doing these things. But no mayor has done that. And Brandon Scott, council president now, will be mayor after the general election. That's a prediction.
No guarantees.
That's just me speculating.
Right.
You know, Brandon, if he, and in fact, some of the critics of this question, of this charter amendment, some of the critics have said, Brandon can hire a city administrator if he wants. Why should we make the next mayor have to hire one? And that's where this really just becomes a sort of a philosophical question. Brandon put this in because he believes not only that the mayor should have one. Other cities, other counties have a chief administrative officer, and Brandon put this on the ballot because he believes it's a best practice for government in Baltimore. And if you agree with him, you should vote for it. And if you don't agree with him, you should know you're going to get one even if it loses.
Very good. I see. That's where I got my wires crossed because, former guest on our show, Dan Sparacco, was talking about eliminating the position of city council president and then mentioned Rebecca as the administrator. And I didn't know whether this was a breadcrumb along that trail to that end or something to that effect.
So like, not all due respect to Dan, Dan has a lot of nuance that I don't know always made it across. And even when you talk to him, I don't think he wanted to eliminate the city council president as much as he didn't want it to be elected at large.
Okay.
By the voters at large. The council president should be elected by the council. It should be a speaker of the body, just like other legislative bodies have. They have a leader that's elected by them, so the speaker or the president really represents the council itself. And, for what it's worth, I agree with it. And that is one of the issues that I think the Charter Review Commission will take up next year.
Cool. Fantastic. Thank you, Bill, for explaining all of these questions, but we got to get to one more because it's a state level question, is it not?
Wait.
Sorry, this is the one about gambling.
Oh yeah. So so there's two state questions. Question one, ironically, question one is the same as question F, but at the state level. It's about giving the General Assembly the power to move money around in the budget. And I'm really still trying to wrap my head around the fact that the Baltimore Sun recommended that people vote for question one, but then recommended against voting for question F, even though they do the exact same thing at two different levels of government. But putting that aside, so question one, pretty cool. I fully understand where the state legislature is coming from, and I would endorse that. Question two is about whether or not we want to allow sports and events wagering at specific facilities licensed by the state around the state. And it is basically another version of, hey, you let us do legalized gambling and we'll make sure that the revenues go to kids. We'll make sure that the extra money the state gets goes into education funding. And as I was saying earlier, this question is the reason I haven't turned in my ballot yet, because I'm still not sure if that money really, truly will go to education, and it won't just replace money that now we will pull out from the general fund and send it to other uses, such that if we raise an extra $50 million a year in sports gambling, does that mean education funding is going to go up $50 million? And so I'll probably end up reaching out to Bill Ferguson or Mary Washington or someone else from the city's state delegation to get the assurance that I need that when we changed how we locked down education funding a couple of years ago, that change would apply to this. And if it does, then yeah, it's probably worth it.
It always makes me laugh when I, hear politicians in general, or at least state politicians, talking about lock boxes and how they always somehow manage to have a combo to them.
Yeah. Is it really a lock box if you can get into it?
Yeah. All I got to do is vote. Be like, oh, yep, we voted on it. Take that money, throw it on the highway. There you go.
There's I don't even remember what staff person I heard say this, but when I first started working in City Hall back in the 90s, one of the staffers in council services said after meeting, he goes, just remember, there is nothing that the people in this room can do that they can't undo next week if they really want.
Yeah. They have done.
Or worse, there's nothing that the people in this room can do that the people who will be in this room 5 years from now can't.
Oy. Bright shining moment. All right, so.
By the people, for the people.
Those are all of our ballot questions. I hope you, listener, have been educated and can make all of your informed decisions. So now we are going to move along to other topics. I did kind of want to talk about, what's the plan for the future of the city, but I decided mid-interview, we will save that for a third visit for you. Because until you're in the position of comptroller, maybe if you could put in a good word for Brandon Scott. I went to St. Mary's too. Get him on the Zoom or whatever.
I will encourage him to come on, and I will remind him again that the St. Mary's connection is not deniable.
No, it's a spiritual thing.
I should have warned you ahead of time. Please, when you're thinking of other topics that we should cover, I only saw the pilot episode of Picard that was free. I didn't spring for all access, so I can't talk about any of the rest of it.
Well, I have friends in low places that watch them all. And Bill, don't waste your time. I'm just telling you.
Okay. All right. I got to tell you, I haven't felt a real lack from not watching it yet. So, okay.
Read the reviews. I think you'll be happy with not seeing it. It was a vast disappointment. I'm sad.
I'll just stick to rewatching old X-Men movies. Get my Patrick Stewart fix that way.
That's probably for the best. I wanted to ask you: have you been paying attention to the Franca Miller-Paz race?
Not probably as much as I should have. I know she's out there. I know she's doing well. I know she's raised a lot of money, and she's the first third-party candidate to get an endorsement out of organized labor that I know of in the Baltimore area. So that all bodes really well for her.
Yeah, she was a guest on this here Zoom program, and well, our connection is strange. We used to work at a sausage place in Fells Point, Ostrowski's, Polish.
Oh yeah, right around from the Islander.
Yeah, it's no longer there, but yeah. Anyway, she was very impressive, and I normally the Green Party candidates, they never see sunlight, but she's raised a ton of money. She's got a lot of parades going on. Like, she's definitely gaining a lot of traction, and I'm very interested to see if she can take the 12th district. And that's all I want to say about it.
It's a really, really, really uphill battle.
That's
I gotta tell you, I haven't had the chance to say this to her directly, but what she's accomplished so far in terms of still being, still having it be a real race at the general election level is so unusual.
Right.
At the council level, it's already been the moral victory.
Cool. So one other thing I wanted to cover before we get to listener questions. As a result, and this is a rumbling that Brooke Learman and other people have brought up in the past, and it seems to be more and more relevant.
Does Brooke really rumble?
Yeah, she's a big rumbler. She speaks so heavily that the walls shake. With the topic of ranked choice, and I don't remember if we spoke you were on the show, but where do you lie on that issue?
Yeah, so if you get into the policy weeds of it, I'm more of an open primaries person than a ranked choice voting person, just because I think it's going to be easier to explain it and sell it to the people as a whole. And I think if you get people into the open primaries mode of thinking, once you're there, then you can teach them ranked choice voting. I think going straight from the status quo to ranked choice voting is a heavy lift. But I definitely don't think ranked choice voting is bad. I'm perfectly happy to acknowledge that objectively it would be not only better than what we have, but it's probably the overall best way to do it. I'm just saying that logistically, sometimes you're better off shooting for incrementalism. And I think it would be relatively easy to get people to move to an open primary format first, where we would accrue some significant advantages to what we have now. And then once we're there, then we move to ranked choice voting. But Brooke and Brandon and I all worked together last year around a resolution at the city level supporting legislation that Brooke had introduced in Annapolis that would have given the council the power to do either ranked choice voting or open primaries. And then that way the citizens of Baltimore can decide rather than the General Assembly deciding. And even when the General Assembly decides stuff based on what the city delegation wants, it's harder for people in Baltimore to go down to hearings and give input. And it's much easier for people to come to City Hall. Now, admittedly, in this environment where most input is virtual, if we ever have a General Assembly session again and they run hearings on Zoom, it will no longer be as difficult for people in Baltimore to go testify. But I still think local determination of how local elections are going to run is the way to go.
Yeah, and excellent point though with the incrementalism, because it is. And I think I remember. I remember this is a dumb thought or very old thought. I remember you. It was something to do. Was it the plastic bag thing? I don't remember. It was like a quarter tax on something or other that you had said, let's do this, and everyone was like, no, that's way too much money. And then you were like, how about a nickel? And I think you made the argument that this is like, yeah, just from incrementing them.
Yeah, like my very first plastic bag bill proposed a 25-cent fee for plastic bags, and people freaked out, even though Ireland had just done one that was the equivalent of 33 cents, and that was 13 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know why I remember that.
But then, you know, the one we ended up passing was significantly smaller, and most of the ones that have passed around the country have been smaller. But maybe that's because you pose a larger one and people go, ah! And then you say, well, how about a smaller one? And people go, well, yeah, I guess, okay. I mean, it's not a quarter, so.
But for matters of the environment, you know, state ban on styrofoam, plastic bags are all but gone. So that's nice. Mr. Cranfield's going to be very hungry, though.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to say, I don't think Mr. Trash Wheel is going to be hungry too soon, because a lot of the stuff that Mr. Trash Wheel eats is actually trash coming from the county, flowing through our waterways. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm happy about a lot of the stuff that Johnny O is doing that the county hasn't done before. And I think that they're making some good moves, but they're still behind us on some of the environmental stuff. And I'd like to see a more level playing field across the Baltimore region for that.
Yeah, it would also be lovely to see an area. I'm sorry, Morris.
Oh, no, I was just going to say
that whole thing.
I'd like to see a more level playing field across the Baltimore region for environmental things, but I will say that Johnny O is the first county executive in a long time who I think would actually want to do that type of regional cooperation with the city, and I'm hoping to be part of it.
Yeah, my comment going over you was that it would be nice to see an era of cooperation between the state, the city, the county, blah, 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 like all of it. I mean, there's always been, or at least in my lifetime, I don't know, a spirit of antagonism between countyites and cityites. And as a person who has been both, I've felt it both ways, and I'm tired of it. So.
Well, I know the Baltimore County executive. I know he's a great guy, and I've heard a lot of good things about Stuart Bittman, the relatively new Anne Arundel County exec. So I think we're moving into a place where we could have a level of regional cooperation that we just have not seen in the last generation or so.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I've been living in the city full time for over 15 years, and there was a period of time where I really felt like we were making headway in a lot of improvements. Had a major backslide for quite some time, and this upcoming transition of leadership really kind of gives me new hope. Star Wars Episode 4.
Well, do you back in the I want to say it was in the 90s? For about 10 years, I guess, we had some shared districts between the city and the county in the state legislature. And there was a real, several of the districts on the outer edges of the city went across the city-county line and also included county residents. And I thought that was going to go on forever, and I saw it as the beginning of an era of regionalism. And then I think it was Governor Glendening submitted a redistricting plan that was so extreme that it got challenged in the court, and the court threw out Glendening's map and drew their own map, and in their map, they locked everybody back into their subdivisions, and regionalism kind of went away. And so maybe that's what we need to be looking for, is more shared districts to encourage more cooperation between the two delegations, or the three delegations.
It's gotta suck if you're living in a row home, on Cold Spring, or I don't know, what's any road on the west side or something like that, and the person across the street from you is paying county taxes. Oh, the envy.
I have friends who used to live in Mount Washington, where their house was in the city and their backyard was in the county, and they used to make fun of the fact that they wanted to pick their house up and push it to the back of the lot so that they could pay county taxes on the house and pay city taxes on the empty
land.
ground.
Yeah. Oh boy. All right, Bill, thanks so much for going over all these questions and indulging my questions. But now it is time for listener questions.
Listener questions.
Yes, these come to us from the CTB Fam Zone Extreme. It's on Facebook. You can find it today. The question I posed, well, really the thread reads, chatting it up with Bill Henry tonight. If you have any questions for him, post them in this post thread for comments. First question from listener Chris L is, what's your sign?
I'm a Leo. Is that not obvious?
Figures. I don't know what any of this means. I am I'm an absolute pariah when it comes to astrology, because I'm a Gemini, and everyone is always like, ew, oh, figure.
Have you ever seen Kentucky Fried Movie?
Oh, not in a very long time.
Oh, okay. Go back and rewind. Being a Gemini is a running joke throughout the movie. I'm a Gemini, so I never know what to expect, and usually the person who says that gets shot by an arrow.
Okay.
No matter where they are or what they're doing.
Was that George Lucas that did that? No, I'm thinking of American.
No, it's the guy who did Airplane.
Right.
The
Zuckers.
Zuckerberg, yeah.
Okay. All right, next question. This one's from a friend of the show, Keisha Allen, who unfortunately did not win her primary. Anyway, this one's a bit misspelled, so we'll have to interpret what it means. It says, what will to the infamous typewriter used to type the Board of Estimates agenda since 1930?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of questions about what am I going to do with all the typewriters in the comptroller's office once we move in. And there will probably be a photo op involving it, but I don't want to give anything away at this point. We'll probably have a little fun with it, and maybe we can invite a couple people to come and be part of the show.
I will certainly take one off your hands.
First tips goes to the Maryland Historical Society.
Oh, very good. Yeah. What about the Museum of Industry?
Ooh, good point. All right, somebody take a note of that.
I'll put it in the chat. A question from Liz, listener Liz. Have we answered the hole question sufficiently? And she's referring to that giant hole where the Mechanic Theater was. And I think the last time that you were on the show, ground had been broken. I don't know what was going on with that project. It also brings to mind the fact that I haven't been in that part of downtown in 7 months.
That's a fair point. The last I heard anything about it, it was still tied up in court.
Oh,
but
okay.
I also have not had any reason to be walking by that location
Giant hole
for most of the last year, so I don't know if that information is out of date.
What's the status on Lexington Park? Because I know that they started doing stuff over there. It's Lexington Park. That's in Southern Maryland.
Lexington Market.
Yeah,
they're cranking along. I thought they actually had finished phase 1 and had some kind of semi-grand opening.
Okay. I got to roll up there and see what's going on.
They're cranking along. I think that's Seawall. I think Seawall is doing some good work there.
Yeah, they do everything. Another question.
It just feels like if you live in a certain axis.
That's right. From John Heltman, the editor of American Banker magazine. It says very vaguely, ask him about the vacants, which I feel like could be another episode.
It's the vacants.
The vacants, yeah. Well,
is that an indie pop band that I'm unaware of? Or?
Yes, it's a pop band from the late '70s.
Ask me about the vacants. I think he's trying to be helpful. I think he's trying to give me a chance to talk about a particular thing that I like talking about, except that I like talking about it, so it would take another half hour, and we don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, we'll get to that someday, but I think
let's do it. Let's do one about vacant houses. That could be a whole show.
We should also get John Heltman on that show because he did a podcast series entitled Nobody's Home, which is about vacant properties in Baltimore.
That sounds like a great idea.
So he has some expertise on the matter, at least. And our next question comes to us from Haley. He says, how does Bill feel about his TikTok fame?
Well, I'm of two minds. No, I'm not. I'm excited about the fact that I'm now on an entirely new to me social media platform, and
controversial too.
The platform. I was like, me?
Yes, you.
Only for the people who are real solid fans of the strong mayor system. It would be hard for anyone watching me doing them to believe, but I am kind of enjoying the experience.
Well, there you go.
A little bit. I'm loosening up. I'm starting to enjoy them. And the important thing is, if there's anybody who is watching them who isn't already looking at the stuff I post on Facebook or the stuff we tweet or the stuff on Instagram, if they're seeing it through TikTok, then that's the job, man. I mean, I'm out here trying to help people learn more about their government, and I'll meet them wherever they are.
Fantastic response. Thank you. And one final question from the same listener. Also, ask Bill about paying the sanitation workers more with 3 exclamation points.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with Councilman Schleifer and Councilman Cohen have been pushing this issue of both increasing their salaries when we're doing the next round of contract negotiations, but right now using some of the CARES Act money to provide them with some bonuses. And I honestly, I'm not sure that I fully appreciate the opposition to this. The opposition to this seems to consist of, we only have so much money and we can't spend it on everything. And yeah, you're absolutely right. We only have so much money and we can't spend it on everything. So we should spend it on things that are important, like paying the people who pick up our trash and who are now picking up more trash because so many people are home.
Right.
Our tonnage went up 30% when the pandemic started. So not only do we have guys who are at risk of getting sick, so they're doing a job which is intrinsically dangerous, but now they're doing more of it. And if you don't think that that merits some extra compensation, that's sad.
It is sad. But you know what else is sad? The fact that we don't have recycling now, because I am embarrassed at the amount of beer cans I'm taking to those. It's bad. I'm talking like mountains of beer cans. So please, cut those checks. Get me my recycling back.
We are hopeful that recycling will be turned on sooner rather than later.
Thank God. Woo! Well, that is the end of our listener questions. Do you have any other pending issues or thoughts that you would like to deliver to us before we say adieu?
Just going to say that today is October 8th, and today has the distinction of being both my daughter Claudia's 18th birthday. So on the very, 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 very small chance that she's actually listening to all of this, I'm going to say happy birthday to Claudia. But the other particular milestone is today marks exactly 2 months until my swearing in as comptroller. I have 2 months remaining as the councilperson for the 4th District, and I am looking forward to the next phase and very thankful and proud to have been the councilperson for the 4th District for as long as I have been. And now let's take everything I learned there and apply it to making all of Baltimore better.
Absolutely. Hell yeah. Thank you so much for saying that, and happy birthday to your daughter. And Bill, we will have you back on, I don't know, in the next 4 months or so, once the dust is settled on everybody getting into office.
Yeah. Let me, make sure all the, things are on the wall straight and people are actually in the offices that they're supposed to be, and see you early next year.
Yeah, definitely make sure some of those typewriters in the background.
Oh yeah, well, like I said, we'll reach out for that.
All right. Thank you very much, Bill Henry, for being on.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.